Ah, namaste. Oh, look at that light. Greetings, my friends. How are you? Coming to you live from the wonderful streets of Pune, Maharashtra. My friend, the fruit seller, just gave me some delicious grapes, which I'm chowing on. This will be my last video for a little while. I'm going to be going offline for some weeks or more, heading into several Vipassana retreats that I'll be volunteering at one and then sitting one or more. And some things have come up today that I just wanted to chat about. I want to chat about the journey, about growth, and about how it is a journey from my experience. Today was a bit of a more challenging one than generally. For no specific reason, just one of those days where different things arise. Maybe I was sensitive, maybe my subconscious is feeling some sort of anxiety, or when you're going in and you're doing big work, or when you're doing intentional work, I don't like to put too much weight on it, like going into courses or retreats or just facing certain things that you may have been putting off or whatnot. Sometimes unconsciously can act in ways out of anxiety or fear or attempting to avoid or whatnot. I had some conversations where I felt a bit more triggered than I normally do, less equanimous, felt some emotions, I felt some hurt, felt some pain, talking with some loved ones and things. And then I was going about attempting to get, well, I won't say attempting, ultimately I was successful in having some papers notarized. I haven't yet been successful in getting them mailed to the United States because this process is not the same process as going to my bank and just having some notarization done. It's not what we would call a simple process, at least people in the United States. It's maybe simple. So I was feeling that. I was just not at the place of peace and equanimity that I have been a lot of these more recent times. And then I went to mail them, and I thought that I had successfully completed these before I'm going off the grid here, and these are important documents, and I had allowed myself to feel a little stress and anxiety about getting them done. And then I get to the courier and they say, oh no, we need all this other stuff that you don't have. And I just felt anger and I expressed it. I raised my voice at the man who's, it's not like it was his fault. I even swore. I was just upset and I walked out. And that's life. Like, as we're on this journey, we can see other people who seem to be at a different place than we are. They seem to be, so different. They don't have the challenges that we do, or they, like, so many of my videos or what I'm sharing is generally about positive things. But on this journey, it's not like everything just goes away. It's a progression. The beauty of it is, I felt those emotions. These are emotions that I've felt in the past, and I've acted that way in the past. But the beauty of it, as Goenkaji says in Vipassana, as we continue these small, positive daily practices, which when repeated consistently over time yield stunning results, when we continue these practices, this practice of meditation, as I've discussed, which is a practice of bringing my mind back to my focus, no matter what external things may be attempting to distract me. When I continue bringing it back, that becomes an automatic habit, and so I may not be at the place yet where I'm just fully equanimous all the time and I'm feeling grace to people even when they're acting in ways which seem to me ignorant or rude or things like that. I may not be at that place yet, but guess what? I bring myself back a lot faster than I used to. And when I do allow myself to be distracted, when I do allow emotions to take control of me, they take control of me much less than they used to. They're not nearly as strong for much less of a time. So I allowed myself to go back into that kind of self-gratifying, woe is me, this is not fair, these people, let me feel these emotions, let me go in. Because we become addicted to unhealthy emotions. We don't just become addicted to the positive dopamine, serotonin sorts of love emotions. Most of us are addicted to these other chemicals. We don't realize it, but our brain is releasing all the chemicals. When you feel stress, when you feel anxiety, when you feel negativity, when you feel bitterness, when you start blaming people, when you start talking about how hard your life is, your brain is releasing chemicals, your body is releasing chemicals. And as that happens over and over and over, you're training yourself to want those chemicals, whether or not you know it consciously. Oh, I don't want to be depressed. Oh, I don't want to be negative. Oh, I don't want to be mean. That may be what you're saying consciously, but as we've discussed, the subconscious is so much more powerful. And when we're training our cells so that their little receptor sites are so used to receiving these specific hormones that create those negative feelings, that's an addiction. So I allowed myself to go back into that for a little period, but guess what? I didn't go back into it nearly how I used to. Basically, as soon as I walked out the door, I wasn't totally at peace again, but I was already laughing at myself like, wow, okay, I'm doing that. And by the time I had walked down the street, about 15 minutes later, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go back and apologize to that man. That's completely unnecessary. And I'm not worried about not being able to get these things mailed by tomorrow before I leave, because I don't need to worry about that. We'll see what happens tomorrow. So the strength of the emotion control decreases. The amount of time that I'm out of my focus, out of alignment, decreases. We continue practicing, and this continues shrinking until I very much believe we get to a place where it's just not a part of our life anymore. We observe these things, we can see what's going on, and we laugh about it. I laugh so much these days about things which 1 year ago, namaste, 2 years ago, they would have been, I would have felt so triggered, so stressed, so upset, so fearful. Today, actually, a day ago, I listened to a voice memo from a woman. I've never actually met her. She's a friend of mine. We connected on a personal growth mastermind. Last year, if you remember, when I started the 70 days, I initiated the 70 days rising before 5 a.m. and she was interested in that. So we began checking in with each other every day, and she's been beginning diving into her own journey, where she has had pretty strong physical and mental self-created neuroses, disempowering ways of living, blaming, feeling negativity about work, about different people, about just the unfairness of certain things. But she's been diving into it, and so I am at a place where I'm several years beyond, so I've been able to share different tools and different ways of thinking and help be a very conscious mirror to her as she's speaking, and help her to see when she's using disempowering words, or help her to recognize ways that she can shift things and make them positive and empower herself, or things like that. And to see her, transition is like fantastic. We've recently begun talking again, because I was in the darkness for those 3 months, and then for a month or so after, we hadn't talked. So it had been 4 or 5 months, And now I'm talking to her, or I'm getting her voice memos, and her voice, her tone is just so peaceful. She's sharing similarly challenging situations that she's in, but the words that she uses are very much taking ownership. That, like, talking about work and things, the tone, the words, they're so different from whatever it was 8-10 months ago. It's not even a year ago. And I'm like, wow, it's fantastic. And another thing that she is very wonderful about is sharing authentic appreciation. And this is something that I am very big into, because I believe that in many of our societies, especially in the United States, we have a very common thing in much of our society where it's like looked down on as being selfish or narcissistic or something. I don't even know, when we feel good about ourselves and are proud about ourselves and speak openly about the positive things that we're doing. And so I think this has created habits for us where we're not comfortable. If you explore, there's a term shadow work, and this is a theory put forth, I believe, by Carl Jung, Jung. He's a famous psychologist, among other things. But there's two different shadows, and the theory is kind of like that we hide these parts, and they're parts that we have not healed. One is the dark shadow. This is the things that we maybe feel guilt about, shame about, fear about. I've talked about some of this in my own life with the sexuality from childhood, or with my sexual addiction in the past, ways that I treated people, this sort of thing. That would be the dark shadow. And then we also have the golden shadow, and this is where we feel inside that we're called for something bigger, that we have the potential to be leaders, that we are meant to change the world, that we have awesome freaking stuff, and really freaking stoked about it. But I'm afraid to talk about it. I'm afraid to even talk to myself about it, because I've been taught to push that down. I've been taught to not be different. I've been taught to not stand out. I've been told to not talk about myself because I'm narcissistic or selfish. So I have a practice now. It's just automatic, partly because as we continue down this road, we might be working on one area. Like, my priority, and I believe it's foundational for everyone, is the relationship with ourselves. So I'm working on my relationship with myself, but as that improves, just automatically my grace and my love and unconditional love for others, it's just coming out more and more. And so I'm very much into sharing authentic appreciation for others when I see or hear or know that they're doing something, or just for their interaction in my lives. And this woman, she gives some great one, and I listened to this message yesterday. She's talking for some time about what she's going through and these sorts of things, and then she ended it with like 3 minutes where she was talking about when we first began talking, and this is strictly as friends, no romantic of any sort. We're teammates, we're peers. She said, when I first met you, and we haven't met in person, but our interaction, she said, when I first met you, I thought, wow, I don't know if I've met anyone like him before. He is very aware of himself. He's really doing the work. And she went on to say these sorts of things, and she said, ultimately, you challenged me to begin taking, I don't remember the specific words, I have them written down because I keep a journal of these sorts of things for when I go through challenge, to be able to come back and look and say, wow, look at this. Yeah, Samuel, don't worry about it. Keep going your thing. She said, ultimately, you've challenged me to want and then work towards a better life because I have seen you doing it. And she said, ripple effects are a real thing. Which I believe, but to hear that from someone, man, I hope that you know how good that feels. I hope that that's a part of your life. And I feel so happy that is a pretty regular part of my life. Now, she is really fantastic about sharing her appreciation, so it's not always like that, but it's pretty regular now in my life where I receive comments from people thanking me for how I'm living or how I'm assisting them or how I'm interacting or just appreciation for me. And that feels so freaking good because I'm like, wow, my life, my actions are bringing positivity into the world, which is what I'm interested in doing. Now, today, I had another voice memo from a loved one of mine, and it was in conversation about another loved one who's been in challenging life situations for some years. And ultimately, it's my belief that any of our external situations, whether they're positive or challenging, are due to our own internal situation. So in this case, it would be my belief that the reasons ultimately that he has been in such challenging situations is because he is at a place where he does not yet acknowledge, and this person often lives in a way that is blaming external things. So in this voice memo from a loved one, was saying, we were talking about different ways to assist this person. Was saying, yeah, I don't know that he's at the place to be doing all these things that you're doing. You know, of course, it was intended with love, but it was basically saying, yeah, like, let's help solve some of these external situations that he's in, maybe with finances or something like that, and what you got to share doesn't really apply because you're at this place where you're doing these things like living in India and sitting in darkness for 3 months, or dry fasting, or really diving into meditation or whatnot. And it can be so easy for us to use those excuses for ourselves when we look at others who are living in a way that seems so different from us, and we say, oh yeah, well my situation is different, you're at this place, you're obviously different, you were born different, you had these different experiences, I've got a family, or I've got these addictions, or I've got whatever. Man, it's just not the way it is, I don't think. You know, like, with all love and respect to them, of course he's not currently at the place where I am. 1 year ago, I wasn't at the place where I could do these sorts of things in the way that I'm doing now. It's a progression. It's a putting one foot in front of the other with small positive daily practices repeated consistently over time yields stunning results. If you want to talk about being in a dark place, let's remember where I came from. And it's not a competition, but 4.5 years ago, I was at the darkest place of my life. The end of 2019, maybe that's 5 years ago. Darkest place of my life. I was living in a way, I was having casual sex with between 1 and 7 women per week. Mostly new ones, mostly one-night stands, all of them in unhealthy dynamics, dominant, submissive, these sorts of things where we're both feeding unhealthy dynamics inside of us from our past or from just our own ways of escaping from the life that we're living that we hate. I was drinking a lot. In previous years, I have been arrested 1 time for alcohol related and been picked up by police, thankfully not arrested 2 more times. I was at a place near the end of my Marine Corps career where I was literally praying that I did not, with weeks left, I was praying that I did not do something to get myself kicked out and get a dishonorable discharge, because I was out of control. I was out of control, and I knew it, And part of me wanted it to happen because I hated myself so much, and I hated the way that I was living because I was living counter to who I was deep inside, and I was tearing myself apart. So that's where I was 5 years ago. And that's just a small part of it. Depression, nonstop. Starting to go to military psychologists, which all love and respect for them. I imagine that they're attempting to do the best that they're currently able. But at least when I was there, it's not a very advanced practice. It's pretty, old school Western psychology, not really very beneficial. But that's the place that I was at. I had no practices. I had no understanding of this sort of thing. I didn't know about neuroscience. I didn't know about I can change these unhealthy habits and ways that I've been living really easily, even though I've been running my head against the wall for decades trying to fix them. But I've just been doing it with willpower and without learning about it and without getting to know myself and without creating intentional, small, positive daily practices, which when repeated consistently over time yield me stunning results. Thoughts of suicide on a regular basis. So that's where I was 5 years ago. So let's be realistic. Whenever we see anyone who seems like they're at a place that we would like to be at, but we don't feel we can be because they're different, it's not true. Albert Einstein, someone we think of as a genius, a born natural genius, what did he say? He said, only he or she who devotes themselves to a cause with their whole strength and soul can be a true master. He didn't say unless they're born special. What did Michael Jordan say? He said, I just practice more than everybody else. What does anyone say that you look up to if you dive into them and look into them? Ray Dalio. Any of these incredible sports athletes, any of these very intelligent people, they have practices. The people that we want to be. Tony Robbins, if you go to his events, he says, I created this mother effer. He created them. Since he was 19 or something, he's been listening to these tapes, reading these books, and learning how to create his life. It's the only way we get to be there, my friends. Most of us aren't going to walk down the street and pick up the magic golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory of life, and all of a sudden we're going to become the person that we want to be. It takes intentional practice. It takes taking time for ourselves. It takes stopping, listening to ourselves, giving ourselves love. So I can tell you, it feels really good to receive a voice message where someone says, when I met you, I thought, wow, I've never met anyone like him before. That blows my mind. Like, how awesome is that? What kind of props is that? And I can tell you, 5 years ago, if she and I would have had an interaction, at some point, I would say there's over a 90% probability that I would have at some point attempted some sort of sexual interaction, sexting, phone, photos, something like that. I did it with like every female that I knew almost. And now 5 years later, I'm at this place where unhealthy sexuality hasn't even been a part of my life for over a year, as in like temptations of any sort, as in living in ways that I didn't think was possible because I believed that this was just a part of who I am, this continual gut-wrenching, can't think about anything else craving nonstop. I thought that was just how I was going to live my life, and that's one reason why I was debating potential future suicide, because I did not want to deal with it anymore. I'm telling you, friends, it's possible, it's here, it's available to you, it's available to all of us. When we start doing this, guess what happens out here? Ripple effects are real, my friends. I love you. I'm going offline for a while. I'm going to be working to not be thinking about you. I'm going to be working on not thinking about anything, reconnecting here even deeper, continuing this practice, practicing, so that our next interaction, it will be whatever it will be, but it's my intention for it to be something positive. I love you. By the way, if you don't know, this is American Sign Language, and it means I love you. American Sign Language is hand sign language for people who are deaf or have limited hearing. This means I love you, because I'm all about everything I do being positive conditioning. Love you.